So for today's movie review, I'll be reviewing the 2004 action comedy Cutie Honey, a film that's essentially a live-action adaptation of a anime series from the 1970s simply called Cutie Honey. Now, admittedly, I've never seen the 1970s incarnation of the Cutie Honey character, but I am familiar with the franchise through the 1994 anime OVA New Cutie Honey. And apparently the film did well enough for the franchise that a couple months later, a new animated series called Cutie Honey came out. And instead of being based upon the 1970s incarnation, this new anime series is based more on this live-action incarnation of the character. Now, before I go any further into this movie review, I bet you're wondering, who is this Cutie Honey character? If I had to describe her in a nutshell, she's essentially a vintage prototype of the lead female character from Kill la Kill. But instead of bonding with a sentient sailor suit to become a magical girl, Cutie Honey becomes a android that becomes a magical girl. Or she's like Barbie if she had the same power set like Mega Man, in that sense of she's able to access different powers through the outfit she wears, if that makes any sense. But anywho, even though Cutie Honey is considered to be one of the more iconic anime characters that came from the 1970s era of Japanese animation, she is obscure by today's standards since she's not quite the household name like she once was, but still maintains a fan base in the form of a cult following. Granted, a very strong cult following since not only do we get the occasional new anime about the character, but we've also had a live-action TV show along with a new movie called Cutie Honey Tears that came out in the fall of 2016. And the film itself is directed by Hideaki Anno, the same guy who gave us anime from Gunbuster, Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, to his magnum opus Neon Genesis Evangelion, along with directing the 2016 Godzilla movie Shin Godzilla, which leads me into my biggest question. Is Cutie Honey a good live-action adaptation of an anime from a Japanese point of view? As for the plot in the movie, it's about this superhero who joins forces with a cold policewoman along with a hotshot reporter in order to battle against this evil organization called Panther Claw in order to not only save all of humanity, but to also rescue the superhero's uncle and avenge her father's death. So in terms of what I liked about the movie, Hideaki Anno knew that he was making an adaptation of an anime, and he adapted to that general idea of an anime because most live-action adaptations of an anime have a tendency to either be way too serious for their own good, or when they try to be ridiculous like the anime it was based on, they go a bit too overboard. This movie here, there's a nice balance to that where on one hand, it's not super serious, but it's serious enough that it knows how to have fun. Like, the best way to describe this movie, it's kind of like Evil Dead 2, because the movie is really campy and over the top, and the movie, because it's trying to replicate a live-action anime feel, it gets that general aesthetic down very well, because it's very colorful to look at, from the set designs, and the costume designs for both Cutie Honey along with the villains I think are well designed. Starting with Cutie Honey, albeit I do have a few problems with it, which I'll get to in a bit, but I do like the color scheme of how the pink plays off the black, and even though it doesn't look anything like the original incarnation, there's definitely enough motifs there to just go, yes, this is indeed Cutie Honey. However, we'll go into my problems with the outfit because the original incarnation, yes, it was a very skin-tight outfit, but the only areas of her body that were exposed were her back and cleavage. Now, why I bring this up, because when you look at the movie incarnation of the character, I noticed that throughout the movie, the midriff area, or any part of the costume showing skin, is exposed, but not really exposed. Because the more I look at it, it looks like the actress is wearing a skin-colored spandex, which really confused me. It's like, wait, if that area is supposed to be exposing a midriff, why not just show the midriff without the skin-colored spandex? Or just have a consistent costume from start to finish. That doesn't show any areas that look like they're exposing skin, since there are several points in time where the main character, when she's not in her Cutie Honey alter ego, is shown to be in her underwear, and when we do see her wear nothing but underwear, we see a lot of her skin. oh, but let's not stop there. Because when you look at the anime incarnation that was based off this movie, that area is exposed. So I'm not entirely sure why the character's costume in this movie has a midriff area that appears to be depicted using a skin-colored spandex, but enough about the Cutie Honey costume. Overall, looks nothing like the original counterpart, but it definitely gets the idea across. And in regards to the costumes that the henchmen wear, especially the villains, because they just look over the top, but they're fun to look at too, because they're not all the same costume. Like, I could tell what villain was what villain, and I love the amount of detail that goes into each costume as well. And the fight scenes are very well choreographed, albeit they're very over the top, but they're meant to be over the top. And there's never a dull moment in this movie. It's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where even when there isn't a fight scene, there's almost always something ridiculous going on. Although the one random thing that kind of made me chuckle, not entirely sure why, but it did, the main hero's cell phone ringtone is essentially the same sound that King Ghidorah made during the Showa era Godzilla movies, and I just find that to be hilarious. And another aspect of the movie that I liked is the editing, because of how over the top it can be, because it's got the same kind of kinetic energy that you would find in something like Hot Fuzz, where you have a scene where the main character might be doing something mundane, but it's shot and edited in such an over-the-top way that it becomes hilarious to watch. Now, as for the next following film aspect, I could put this into two categories. One of them being a positive and the other one being a negative of the film, that being the pacing. Because on one hand, because of the fast-paced nature of this movie, it's really entertaining. But because of said fast-paced nature, it can also cripple a movie. Because there's some scenes where they go by so fast that it feels like they could have spent more time with that particular scene or characters, but then they might drag something else. And here's the thing, the movie is 90 minutes. It goes by pretty fast. Until you get to the last half hour, because the first 15 minutes, you have Cutie Honey battling two of the remaining generals. Then the rest of the climax is her dealing with the main villain. I feel that if the movie was an extra 15 to 20 minutes, I think the pacing would have been a lot better in some cases. But as it is, like I said, it's both a good and bad aspect of the movie. In terms of what I disliked about the movie, the CGI, along with the green screen, can be bad at points in time, or it doesn't look like it's fully rendered. And the movie periodically shows random anime clips from time to time. I mean, granted, the anime clips themselves do their job of either providing exposition or doing a weird transformation sequence without actually doing a live action transformation sequence, but it just feels so odd to have random anime clips inserted into a live action movie. Now, before I go any further, I've seen the movie in only its English dub, so I have no idea how well the original Japanese version is, but as far as the dub goes, it's very over the top. But I think it was meant to be over the top since the movie was already over the top to begin with. And another problem I had with the English dub as well, actually it's more of a nitpick, is with one bit of dialogue and a particular voice they choose for one of the characters. That being the Gold Claw General, because at one point in time, one of the henchmen addresses the character as Mistress, but yet the character is clearly being dubbed over with a male voice. I'm not entirely sure if this was done intentionally, and at the same time I actually do like it because it fits the character, but I am just kind of surprised that they didn't get a female voice actor to play the role of Goldclaw. And there are just some characters that appear out of nowhere from time to time. Like, there'll be points in time where a character may be doing something and all of a sudden, like, a character just shows up and I'm like, what the hell's this? Also, there's some ideas that are presented early on, but might get dropped off at some point, like when one of the 4 evil generals gets destroyed. You see a rose representing each general, and you see that rose petal die. Yet, that's the only point in time where we ever see that idea. It's never shown again throughout the entire movie. It's almost like they had ideas to show that throughout the movie, but maybe because of budgetary reasons, they cut that at the last second. And the main villain herself, I thought, was just kind of boring. Because I definitely remember more of the generals than I do the main villain. It's just like, I remember you in terms of the visual aesthetics, but as far as your personality goes, I don't remember a freaking thing about the character. And speaking of the characters, as far as the lead 3 characters go, I didn't think they really had that much of an arc to go through. Because on one hand, yes, we do know their backstories, we do know their personalities and motivations, and to some degree, yeah, they all do go through an arc of sorts, but I feel, again, because of the fast-paced nature of this movie, I feel like their overall character arc could have been handled a lot better. Granted, I don't think it's handled badly, but I don't think it's as fully fleshed out as it could have been. Another aspect of the movie that I could have done without are the 3 random song sequences, because with the first song, we have this character who sings about how great the main villain is, but in terms of the person who sings the song, we don't know this person's name, we don't know their backstory, we never see them again, nor are they ever mentioned again throughout the entire movie. So I could have done without that song sequence altogether. The second song sequence, again, adds nothing to the overall story, but context-wise, it's a bunch of characters doing karaoke because they happen to be drunk at that point in time, and it just happens to be a light-hearted moment, so I'm okay with that aspect of it. Now, as for the third song sequence, it actually does serve a purpose because it does explain the overall motivation of the villain who's singing it, but in terms of how that particular song sequence plays out, it plays out like a random musical number. Because with the first 2 song sequences, that's it, they were just song sequences. They weren't musical numbers. The third song is a musical number, and the scene comes off as like a big what the fuck kind of moment. Although, it is great to hear Dan Green provide not only the voice for that particular villain, but also provide the singing vocals as well, which I think is hilarious to hear him sing. So for my final verdict of Cutie Honey, if I had to compare this movie, it's kind of like the 1985 Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Commando. Now, what do I mean by this? The movie in of itself has a lot of problems, from plot holes, character development, pacing issues, to a lot of other aspects related to filmmaking. And on top of that, the cliches that are presented within the film itself are cliches that you've seen before. But here's the thing, the movie takes these cliches and ramps them up to such a ridiculous degree that it makes the film that much more enjoyable to watch. Because the film knows exactly what it is and only seeks to entertain, to the point where you can overlook the problems. And as far as a live-action adaptation of an anime goes, it's better than your average live-action adaptation. Probably a lot better than what Hollywood has produced in the past 20 to 30 years. So overall, the movie's flawed, but really entertaining. And before I give my final rating, what did everyone else have to say about Cutie Honey? So, looks like a lot of people give this movie average to okay ratings. I mean, I know the movie's flawed, but come on. It's just so much fun that I give it a 4 out of 5. So, what is your least favorite anime and/or movie directed by Hideaki Anno? And see you later.